Greetings and welcome. So news of the day. We're looking at a second news of the day type video. Well, kind of third. So again, as we get through this free agency phase, and now we start getting into the nuts and bolts of what happens next. So on the free agency side, Georgiev. You know Alexander Georgiev of the New York Rangers? Well, he signed a 2-year contract. The cap hit $2.42 million. So reasonable considering I thought Georgiev played very well last year. I think he has a ton of potential. And when we talk a lot about Shesterkin and how good he is, I think Georgiev has a lot of upside as well. So very glad to see him get his money. And a 2-year deal, very reasonable for him. And we'll see how things go for the New York Rangers this coming season. And speaking of which, because there's some word that's out there, and Bill Foley's comments to the press, which I talked about earlier, they've blown up. So because we're looking for news on what's going to happen next year, the NHL's still looking at next January. They haven't actually sat down to have talks yet, and the timeline will likely be done not by the end of January. Make sure I got the right month up here. So when people find out, hey, Shannon's left-handed. Yep, October. So they want to get together and at least have some kind of a timeline and guideline for the end of October. And the Canadian division is highly likely, but we just don't know. So nothing's set in stone as of yet. There are still owners that say, well, if we have a next season. And again, I point out that even if it's a shortened season, having some kind of a season is really important for 2020, 2021. Just to the financial future of the league and the ability to get that big deal in the States, because their contract is up with NBC next year, and if they don't have that big contract in the States, that might be their last chance for a while. So we'll see what happens, but nothing is set in stone. I know there's a lot of rumors that are out there, so I will make sure that I'm reporting on what is most likely. And again, right now, it looks like January, early January. They're aiming for January 1st. It might be a week into January. We just don't know. So I'm assuming first week of January that we get some hockey going again. And when you look around the world, there are certain leagues that have made it work, some that haven't. And again, the NHL will be doing its homework and looking at the ones that make it work and saying, now, how did they do it? And the ones that fail and saying what caused those ones to fail. The NHL and the NBA are both lucky in this, in that they've had their playoffs work. They both had a successful bubble system, and now they get to see how other leagues make this work and how they don't. So that's really important for the NBA and the NHL. Mackenzie Weegar is still talking to the Panthers. So even though his name's out there in all these trade rumors, and Mackenzie Weegar is desired by many fan bases, I believe, as much as teams. I know his name's come up on the Canucks forum, and most players will when they're available. I think that Florida will try to retain him unless they feel like they can move him and improve some other part of the roster. But with free agent moves that they've already made, they may stand pat and get Weegar under contract. So that may very well end up being a situation that just resolves itself and he stays in Florida. But a situation that had resolved itself, it appeared, maybe not. So Laine may still want out. Kind of. So Pierre LeBrun reached out to his agents. Mike Leut's one of his agents. I know it was one of them. There's another agent too. And basically said, so, what's the status here? How are things go? Because there were rumors that maybe he wouldn't report to training camp. And both agents said no, he will report to training camp. He hasn't requested a trade. At no point has he come out and said he wants out of Winnipeg. But based on all the rumors that are out there, based on all the talk that's been going on, based on the amount of discussions that have been had over his ice time for the last 2 years, it might be mutually beneficial to the team and the player if they work their way to a deal. And by a deal, I mean moving him out of town. Kevin Cheveldayoff, to his credit, when asked, said, Laine is still a part of this franchise and going forward. And so I don't think that Winnipeg feels any pressure to make a move. They brought in Stastny for that second-line center spot. There's natural chemistry between Laine and Stastny, dates back a couple years. And we'll see if they rediscover that and if that changes things for Laine. If I'm Winnipeg, honestly, I don't move him. I don't think you're going to get the proper trade value for Laine right now. you are running a risk. You're running a risk. He'll be a restricted free agent. He'll be holding out for more money than what you want to pay. And you're running the risk that later on it comes back to bite you. But I don't think the market right now is what it could be at, say, a trade deadline, for instance. But, we'll see. So if the agents feel like maybe it's best for him to move on, then that means that it could still happen. But if the general manager isn't looking to move him and he's really underwhelmed by offers, there was rumored to be a deal with Philadelphia they were trying to work out. And if that didn't work, well, that's probably going to be it for now. So it didn't really put the fire out on trade rumors. I expect them to come back again. But I already talked yesterday about how teams just don't have the cap space. And if they do have cap space, how many of them are going to have cap problems in the near future? And how much money is Laine going to want? You may be in a situation where, as a general manager, you go to Kevin Cheveldayoff and go, okay, we like the player. We'd like to make a deal with him. However, in order to bring him to our team, we'd rather negotiate an extension with him first, and then we'll trade for him. Because we don't want to trade for the player and then have him say, well, I want $8.5 million a year, which is more than what we're willing to spend on him. Just using that as an example. And then we end up with us needing to move on from him. So I don't expect anything to happen with Laine soon. I don't think there's any pressure. Now, we've talked a lot about ratings. And I've seen a lot of, everybody sort of going, yeah, ratings are down because, they said things that people don't like, so ratings are down. And I've talked about how that's not really been the case in terms of TV ratings overall. So between 2011 and 2019, and I'd like to thank The Athletic for the research on this one too, 22% was dropped with the big four networks. So we're talking ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox. Those four major networks in the U.S. lost 22% in their ratings of network broadcast TV. Sports lost 0.1% over that same period of time. So sports ratings have stayed pretty much the same, while your ratings for your regularly broadcast television have dropped. And this is your online streaming. This is your various options you have now of your on-demand. And maybe I'm not going to bother with that anymore. And all of that wonderful stuff. There are just a lot of options. Anytime you're watching TV now, it's kind of... There are so many television shows that I have thought over the last few years, oh, that sounds good. I might watch that, like a brand new TV show. And then I hear it got canceled and I go, I forgot that was even on. I have no idea. It is a completely different environment now. And I've always thought that the big four networks were probably way behind the curve in terms of adapting. Well, sports are going to have to adapt too. So this year, 2020, the NBA Finals dropped 49%. The Stanley Cup dropped 61% in the Stanley Cup Finals in terms of viewers. So it's just part of the reason why the NHL is looking at this and saying, we don't want hockey in the summer again. We're not going to do it again. So whatever happens with next season, whether they play or they cancel, whatever they do, that will be decided early, and we will not have playoffs through the summer. And whether there are or aren't summer games, that's not going to happen. But U.S. Open tennis has lost 45% of their viewership. The Kentucky Derby lost 43% of their viewership. The U.S. Open golf tournament has lost 42% of their viewership. And college football thus far this year is down 30%. The NFL is down approximately 10%. So it is all across the sporting world that people are watching the news instead. So one big difference between 2020 and all the years that precede that, the news has become the dominant everything. And there are some good items with that, but a lot of it's bad too. A lot of it is just, there's so much consumption that goes on. One big change I made right around the end of March, I thought, this is too much. So I started really limiting how much news I was watching. So I would still have sources of news that I was using online, but watching the news, I would really, really limit it. But it is causing major dents in viewership across all of entertainment, and that includes the sports world. So for the NHL, again, looking at the ratings for the Stanley Cup Finals, they're going to want to turn them around in 2021, and that's going to involve making a large change in when the Stanley Cup is awarded, and I would think before the end of June. And this is something that, again, nothing is set in stone. I'll come back up here. Nothing's set in stone. But one thing that the NHL seems to be in agreement with between the owners and everybody is they want the Stanley Cup awarded before the end of June. So while I got nervous in March and the season got called off and, put on hold and we didn't know what was going on, the difference would be let's just blow it up. The NHL comes out in November and goes, we can't play a season, that's it. The big difference between that and what we saw in March would be we would go back to a regular schedule. In June, you'd have the draft. In July, you'd have free agency. And then everything would be completely up in the air. The one thing that I think is good is the NHL GMs are still negotiating trades and contracts, and we're still hearing trade talks. We're still hearing guys signing extensions. If there was really a desire in the NHL to just say, well, it's not going to happen and we'll probably just shut it down, we wouldn't be seeing this much activity. There is still, a lot going on with teams. For instance, the Dallas Stars ownership has furloughed employees because they're losing money. Owners are losing money. But if you don't play, you're still losing money, and then you may be losing more money later, which is why I had the video on how they kind of have to have a 2020-2021 season. And I still feel the same way as I did when I made that video, which is good because it really wasn't that long ago. But hey, there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And the good news is 2020 has very few days left in it. We've got about 70 some left, which means that in regular time and how we're going to feel, it'll only feel like another 463 days, and then it's done. So, all right, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support as always. Best of luck to Georgiev and the Rangers this coming season, and best of luck to this coming season. Going to require a lot of work by the NHL and the NHLPA, and look for those meetings to start pretty quick here, and for some kind of a picture for how this is going to work to emerge. Look for modified bubbles. Look for trying to limit or do away with cross-border play, and a way to backdoor. You can backdoor this, and I think they're gonna. The idea that maybe the West plays the West, the East plays the East, and having a scheduling system like that would save so much money on travel. That would save so much wear and tear on players, and it would create so many really, really strong rivalries in the NHL. And still, with a 16-team West and a 16-team East, you're seeing 15 different teams over an 82-game schedule. That's pretty strong. And again, I know there's people who would say, no, forget it, but we'll see. Because the NHL, and I said this back in March, that the NHL has a chance to, over this time, to really kind of reinvent itself, reinvent the product, reinvent playoffs, reinvent the whole thing if they want to, the divisions, you name it. And we'll see what they do. So let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, I will talk to you again soon.